What's up YouTube, and welcome to today's video about NNN REIT. This stock is up 6.5% year to date and has seen quite some lows earlier April of $37, which they recovered pretty quickly with 13 to 14%. So the question is NNN stock a buy? Well, in the most recent results of the 1st of May we see that they beat on FFO and revenue, and within roughly 2 to 3 weeks they are expected to report their new earnings. From a dividend point of view, things look really interesting, with a 5.6% dividend yield and 34 years of dividend increases. So let's take a look at the recent earnings of 1st of May. Total gross assets was reported at 11 billion. FFO per share is at 0.85 and core FFO at 0.86 and AFFO at 0.87. Quarterly dividend is at 0.58, indicating that dividends are covered very easily. Annualized dividend yield is at 5.4%. Looking at the top lines of trade, we see that automotive is a heavy weight within this company's portfolio of nearly 18%. Convenience stores is at 16.8%. Usually I prefer a maximum of 10% here, so that's something to keep in mind. Looking at the core FFO again, we see that this number increased 3.6% year over year, and the ABR increased 5.2%, looking pretty good. Another thing to mention is the occupancy rate, with an average of 97.7%, near NNN's 20-year average of 98.2%. And looking at the diversification, we see that in total there are 3,641 properties, with 400 tenants and more than 37 lines of trades. From a geo breakdown, we see that they are heavily concentrated in the south and in the Midwest. To me, this looks pretty good. Now, let's take a deeper look at this company's performance. The market cap is at 8 billion and revenue is at 848 million, with a net income of 398 million. And looking at the profit margin, we see that this number is at 45%. Meanwhile, the 5-year profit margin is at 42 to 43%, indicating that profit margins are increasing. The 3-year revenue compound annual growth rate is also higher than the 5-year compound annual growth rate, which is a good sign in my opinion. Taking a look at the revenue, we see that this number has gone up very steady and consistent, except for the lockdown periods, which makes a lot of sense of course. To me, this looks really good. Moving on to the margins, we see that this number is also looking pretty good, with gross margins nearly at 100%, and operating margin also increasing ever since beginning of 2021. The same goes for the net margin. Something to keep in mind is that late 2023 both margins are decreasing a little bit. Other than that, it looks pretty good to me. Moving on to the analysis estimates, we see that it is expected that in 2025 to see a minus 5% decrease. On the other hand, in 2026 and 2027 it is expected to recover again. Looking at the revenue, we see that they expect to see a low single digit up to 9% in 2028. To me, this looks pretty decent. Moving on to the cash position, we see that NNN has a total cash of only 5.1 million. Meanwhile, total debt is at 4.5 billion, indicating they can't pay down a big chunk of their debt, so this is something to keep our eye on. Current ratio is looking pretty good at 0.63. Moving on to the free cash flow, we see that this number is at a negative point most of the time. However, in the recent years it is increasing again, which is a good sign to me. Moving on to the shares outstanding, we see that this number is increasing as well over the years, and this is very common for REITs. It might dilute you as an investor, but it is one of the easiest ways for a REIT to generate capital and to grow the business, so I'm not worried that much. Looking at the dividends, as mentioned earlier, dividend yield is at 5.6%, looking really good, above the average for REITs. Annual payout is at $2.4 and payout ratio is at a nice and steady 70%. The 5-year growth rate is at 2.4%, which is a bit on the lower side. Dividend growth is at 34 years consecutive, so this is looking really good. They managed to pull through some tough times. NNN pays a quarterly dividend of $0.6. To me, this looks pretty good. And zooming out to the dividend growth of the recent years, we see that dividend growth has been really slow but steady. Back in 2015, NNN paid 1.71 annual dividends. Meanwhile, in 2024, NNN paid $2.29 dividend, which is a really nice growth over the years. Moving on to the total returns of this stock, we see that on the 5-year chart, NNN underperformed the S&P 500 massively, with nearly 60%. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 almost doubled the amount with 113%. On the 1-year chart, it is a big difference as well, with NNN sitting at 0%. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is at 20%. On the 6-month chart, it is a close tie, with 7.8% for NNN and 7% for the S&P 500. So finally, NNN managed to beat the S&P 500 here. On the 1-month chart, it is the S&P 500 who is the winner again with 5%. NNN is again at 0%. And for the final part of this video, I want to take a look at the 3 price targets that I created using the Everythingmoney software, which is one of the best tools out there. I'm using a low, mid and high assumption. And for the revenue growth, I'm expecting 3 to 5% based on the analysis estimates but also on historical levels. For the profit margin, I expect to see a small increase for the mid and high assumption. For the low assumption, I'm a bit conservative. And it's the same with the free cash flow margin. PE ratio, I'm putting in 20 since it is a REIT. And the price of free cash flow, I'm putting in 10, 12 and 14. It's a slow growing company, but it is really steady and consistent. I'm willing to pay the current price to free cash flow for this stock. My desired annual return is 12.5%, since I get an easy 10% average annual return with owning an ETF. And currently, NNN stock is at nearly $43. I hit analyze, and we see only one green price target, which happens to be the high price target. I'm ignoring the multiple of earnings values for now, so let's focus on the discounted cash flow value, where we see a low price target of $33.48, which is a big decrease from the current stock price. For my mid price target, I'm seeing $14.3, which is a little below the current stock price. For the high price target, I'm sitting at $47.88, which is way above the current stock price and indicating that based on that price target, NNN could be undervalued. Personally, I'm focusing on the mid to high price target, so it's kinda hovering at the bottom of this range. And my final thoughts on these stocks are that NNN is a really reliable stock. They show to be capable of growing the business and the dividends during tough times. And with 34 years of dividend increases, you get a reliable dividend stock. And I'm expecting to see this company to do well in the future as well, with decent numbers, but nothing crazy. So currently I'm not buying this stock because I think there are better deals out there, and also because REITs are already a big part of my portfolio. But from a dividend perspective, things look really good. From a value perspective, you could say that they are undervalued based on the high price target. So please let me know which price target do you think is the most justified here. And also remember to always do your own research and never fully trust on what I or other YouTubers say about a stock. I'm not a financial advisor and this content is just for entertaining purposes only. I hope you liked this video and I did bring some insights of the company to you. I would really appreciate a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this video. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.